Welcome to the wonderful world of pulling dog sports. The first thing we're going to do is have you sounding like you actually know what you're doing. One of the most important members of the team is you. You're the driver or the musher. Those terms are interchangeable. The harness is what fits on the dog's body that she uses to pull. A halter is worn on the dog's face. Do not confuse the two terms. Harness is what we're talking about here. Tug line. The tug line connects one dog to one vehicle. A gang line connects a gang of dogs to a vehicle. And traces connect a dog to a vehicle with shafts like a cart. Tug line, one dog. Gang line, a gang of dogs. Traces, cart. Ground driving, that's the part where you actually train the dog. Now, look at all those wonderful parts of the harness that you don't have to learn. We're going to make it simple. Harnesses come in two parts, the go part and the stop part. First, we'll talk about the go part. Dogs don't actually pull. We say they pull, we talk about them pulling, but they don't pull. They push into the harness. We try to make the harness as comfortable as possible for them so they will enjoy pushing into it. That's mostly involving the front of the harness. This harness is available in every pet store on the planet. This is a chest pull harness. It's easy to get. It's easy to put on the dog. It's okay for big dogs. It's okay for dogs who are not really pulling any weight. It's okay for parades because it's easy to make it look fancy, but it's not a desirable harness. This is the harness we want. This is called a Siwash harness. It has a Y in the front, and we're going to use it for every single thing we want the dog to pull. The front of the Siwash harness, this part, the collar part, sits above the shoulder blade. It sits on the muscle. It doesn't interfere with the dog moving her leg forward. This part sits on her breastbone, right on the bone, so that she can push into it without actually interfering or making life difficult for herself. And the most important part of fitting it is that this part never rides up onto the dog's throat, because if the more she pushes, the less she's able to breathe, she's not going to enjoy what she's doing. Now, the middle of the go harness. This is called a half-back harness, obviously, because it only covers half the dog's back. Notice that the line from the harness to the vehicle or the driver goes up from the half-back harness. If it's not going up, this is the wrong harness. This is called an X-back, obviously, again, because it has an X on the back. Some people refer to this as an X-back harness and completely forget about whether the front is the Siwash front. So be sure, if you're buying an X-back harness, that's what you want, not just that it's this. This is a sled racing or sled pulling harness. Notice that the line from this harness to the vehicle goes straight back or slightly up. It does not go down. This is a side pull harness. This is for pulling, again, anything with shafts, but also for pulling weights and for pulling when the line from the harness to the vehicle goes straight back from low down. The back part of the go harness. If you have a single tug line, it has to go up. That's for ski joring, for sledding, for tracking, for walking. Anything where the line goes up from the dog. If the line is going to go down or straight across, you need traces for carting or driving or weight pull. Traces require a spreader of some kind, so they're not rubbing on the dog's thighs. I'll show you that later. A spreader could be the vehicle itself, or it could be a single tree, which is kind of a little teeter-totter, which moves backward and forward as the dog's shoulders move back and forward. This cart does not have a single tree. If you look at the cart, you can see that as the dog takes each step, the cart has a little wobble in it, left and right, left and right, left and right. If he had a single tree on this cart, it wouldn't be doing that. Now the stop part of the harness, because that's kind of an important part. The stop harness might have straps in common with the go harness, but it is not the same. When you're using a vehicle like skis, roller skates, boards, dog sleds, kick sleds, bicycles, toboggans, you are the one responsible for stopping the vehicle before it hits the dog. And let me tell you, when the vehicle keeps hitting the dog pretty soon does not want to pull anymore. When you have shafts, or a single shaft like the vehicles on the left side of the screen, the dog is the one who brakes. And to brake, the dog needs a harness that's going to brake. On most carts with shafts, this is how it stops. You have a shaft, you have what's called a stopper on the shaft. The stopper is on the shaft behind a loop on the harness. The shaft goes through the loop. When the dog stops, the cart tries to keep going forward, but the stopper on the shaft hits the loop in the harness. And if the harness is actually fitting correctly, both the dog and the vehicle stop. Now, we need to talk about balance. This is a very, very important word. We need to balance the harness. On a Siwash harness, the pull on the pink line must be tighter than the pull on the green line. You can see this harness is attached to traces. When the dog moves forward, the trace is pulling backwards, and the pull goes between the dog's front legs and up onto the neck. That means that the harder the dog pulls, the harder the harness is pulled down off the dog's throat. That is, if the pink line is tight and the green line is taut but not tight. Here's how it goes. This is a Siwash front X-back harness. And you can see with me pulling back on the tug line, this top part is snug, the bottom line is tight. Snug, tight. This will not ride up onto her throat in the front. Now we can talk about vehicle balance. People look at this picture and they say, oh, that poor dog, so much weight on that poor dog. Actually, there's minus 8 pounds on this dog, which is the correct amount of lift on this dorsal shaft vehicle. And this is how you figure it out. The man is a friend of mine, and the dog's name is Tom. If Jim is sitting in this vehicle, exactly, his center of gravity is 1 foot behind the axle of the vehicle. Tom is 6 feet in front of the vehicle, and Tom weighs 100 pounds. Now, to balance equally, Tom's 6 feet and 100 pounds, that's 600 foot-pounds. In order to balance equally, that is to be in danger of lifting up Tom, Jim would have to be 600 pounds. 1 foot times 600 pounds is 600 foot-pounds. 6 feet times 100 pounds is 600 foot-pounds. That's why we want the weight on the cart behind the axle. Look at these. The one on the left, this shaft is towards the front of the cart. It won't balance exactly because the shaft usually weighs more than the back end of the cart. So let's say with no adjustment, there was 4 pounds on the front of the shaft. That's 4 pounds we don't want sitting on the dog. And this particular one, the dog is harnessed 5 feet in front of the axle. So 4 pounds times 5 feet is 20 foot-pounds. If I can put the weight 2 feet behind the axle in the back of the cart, I will need 10 pounds. 2 feet times 10 pounds to balance that 4 pounds on the front on the dog. Let's look at this other one when we have the axle near the back of the cart. That puts the dog 6 feet out in front of the axle, and that means there might be 7 pounds riding on the dog. In order to balance that 6 feet times 7 pounds is 42 foot-pounds, I would have to put 42 pounds in that tiny little space behind the axle. So be sure that your axle sits towards the front of the cart. This bike cart is what I make all my carts out of. I pick them up on websites that are selling used things, and I don't care if the cloth on the bike cart is rotten because I'm going to rip it off anyway, so I can usually get them pretty cheap. Now this bike cart needs to be turned around so it's going backwards. The bicycle doesn't care how much weight is on it, but the dog does. So here's what a bike cart looks like when I've turned it into a dog vehicle. I turned it around backwards. You can see that the axle is closer to the front of the vehicle than the back. It doesn't look like very much, but it makes a difference. I've got the box sitting slightly behind the axle. I've got the papillon sort of centered over the axle. He's not helping much anyway. And I've got 2 5-pound weights on the back of the cart. And all of that adds up to minus 8 pounds on the dog, which means there's a lift on the dog of 8 pounds, which is perfect. No matter how much weight she's pulling in the cart, none of it is sitting on her. And here's some homework for balance. This donkey weighs 600 pounds. The distance from where the donkey is harnessed to the shafts to the cart is 7 feet. The distance from the axle to the back of the cart is 3 feet. And just to make it simple, how much weight had to be on the back of the cart in order to lift up the donkey? 3 feet from the axle to the back of the cart times X pounds has to be greater than 7 feet from the donkey to the cart times the 600 pounds that the donkey weighs. Now we get to the training part. And we'll start with making it very simple because we want the dog to enjoy this. And jumping ahead of where the dog is going to guarantee he's going to be miserable. We split every behavior as much as we can think of, a little bit more than you imagine the dog needs. Sarah enjoys every part of his life except wearing things. What a surprise for me when I slapped a harness on him and he didn't want to walk. Can't walk wearing something. So I had to break it down into little tiny pieces. I start by putting a leash around his belly. Not his belly, but up there. So, and you can tell by his ears that he's not enjoying this. So he wore that around in the house with me for actually about 3 days before he kind of forgot about it. And then I added a tea towel, which is how I start training my baby llamas to carry a backpack. I put a leash around them and then I put a tea towel under it and just let them walk around with it. He was okay with this. This one he was not okay with. That's pushing my luck. Okay, then when he can wear the harness without fussing, I'm going to add some shafts. I used these PVC pipes or whips or broom handles. I actually started him with PVC pipes about half this length so he could wear them around until he got used to them. Now here's where I wanted to show you why you need a spreader bar when you're using a side pull harness. You can see these shafts, they're tied together at the end. They don't have a spreader bar. And they're going to wear, if I leave them there too long, they're going to wear the hair off his thighs. They might even make blisters. But I like the whips because they're nice and soft and they bend. And if he turns and bumps them into something, they're not going to make a big noise and make him upset. So he can do that. Then I add my PVC pipes or my broom handles and don't tie them together so they're dragging on the ground. That makes a noise. He has to get used to the noise. He has to get used to the feel of them dragging. He's okay with that. Then we're going to get him to actually pull something. Again, we have no spreader bar here, but he's pulling basically a balloon. It's not exactly putting any weight on him. Back and forth until he's totally comfortable with the idea. In fact, I want him to be bored. This is so boring. Can we go out and do something? Now I'm going to put the shafts on the cart. And the first way I do it is to tie the shafts together, but not tie them to the dog. So if he gets upset with having the cart following him or having these solid shafts behind him, he shouldn't because I've done all this work ahead of time. But if he does, I can just lift the shafts off. He was okay here standing still. He was a little iffy when he moved and it followed him. Whoops. But that's okay because I can reward him and just take them off. No big deal. Put them on, take them off, make him ready. Okay, when he's used to those, now we're going to actually put the shafts on the harness. And here you need a buddy. You need the buddy to put a leash on the back of the cart and put some weight on it while you lure him forward. If he's going forward cheerfully and willingly, they're going to put a fair amount of weight on the cart. If he's having a little trouble understanding that he can get started, then they don't put very much weight on the cart. That's why it's better than just having weight in the cart, because they can adjust to how the dog feels about it. Now, if your dog is going to be using shafts, he has to learn to pull in a totally different way, a way he has never turned before, because the shafts will stop him from turning normally. He is going to have to learn to sidestep. He cannot turn to look where he's going, which is what he wants to do. And this is the thing that causes the most crashes. The dog tries to turn, the shafts stop him. The dog starts to panic. He ducks down because he can feel the shafts above him. So he ducks down and still tries to turn, and then the shafts are bending, and the dog is panicking, and you break your cart, and the whole thing is just ugly. That's why we train the dog. He's going to have to learn to sidestep like this without looking where he's going. To do that, we're going to attach the traces to something really solid that he can't move. Now I'm pulling him forward with the bait and then over to the side. Come on, buddy, come on. And that way, the traces are stopping him from turning, and he's going to have to learn to sidestep. Front feet and back feet. There he goes. Good boy. Come on, buddy. Come on. There you go. Perfect. Time to move on to the next step. Now I'm going to put him in the cart and attach the cart to the solid object so he cannot pull it forward. Again, I pull him forward and then I pull him over to the side. Come on, bud. Forward and over. Make sure it's tight. And again, he sidesteps. Keep coming. Keep coming. There, he's getting it. Good boy. And when he's got that, then I can take the cart off the solid object and have him just turn it when it's loose. Good boy. And when he's got that, we can put everything together. Notice here the go part of the harness, the Siwash front, going back to the traces on either side, and the stop part of the harness, the shaft with the stopper on it, put through the loop of the harness, and that's his brake. And you can see that he doesn't have a lot of room between himself and the front of the cart. Enough to move without getting hit. But when he stops, he can't have a lot of leeway before the cart stops, or it's going to hit him. Now, when I'm teaching cues, I generally teach them just all day long, every day, particularly when we're going for a walk. Ready? Ready? Hike. Hike is what you say, by the way, not mush. Hike. You can be a musher, but you can't say mush. And when I want him to go faster, yeah, hike, 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 yeah. And easy. whoa. Good boy. You ready? Okay, hike. Come on, buddy, hike, hike. I just say it again when I want him to go faster. That's a good boy. And we're going to turn. Ready? Left, left. Good boy. And whoa. Good fella. Now, some dogs just get into the harness and realize they could go and they're just gone. And others really need some encouragement. So, this is how I teach them to hike in the first place. We go in a circle or around a short block, and I put out dishes with treats in them so that he goes a little way and there's a dish with a treat in it. And we go on a little farther and there's another one. So always in front of him is another dish with more treats in it. As you go by each dish, you can drop a few more treats in. So you could go around this circle 25 times if you don't go around 25 times. But you could keep going if you wanted to because there's always filled treats ahead of you and behind you. Okay? And when he's going forward, willingly and cheerfully, then you can start adding turns. On the left is how to add turns to your circle. A good place to do this is campgrounds and trailer parks. And on the right, look at this wonderful sidewalk that I found in front of a museum. And every one of those cross sidewalks, I can go left, I can go right, I can turn back in the other direction, I can go straight ahead. It's a wonderful place to work. I go there a lot. And even better, there are hairs all over the place. Not dog hairs, rabbit hairs. I might be working there and there might be 5 or 6 hair watching me. And that's really hard for Sarah because he really likes to chase them. And this is how I teach left and right. I move my hand a little bit. I say the word right, left. And pretty soon the dog knows that when she hears the word, she turns in that direction to get that treat. And then I do right and left. This obviously is a left. And she can go do something to that boot. She could circle it, or she could touch it, or she could retrieve it. And then we get farther away. I could put jumps in there. I could put a mat there so she could go to mat to the left or right. We move farther and farther away. And pretty soon, every time we're leaving a room, I'm going to say on by to go ahead, or I'm going to say left or right as she gets through. So we're going to turn, even if she already knows she's turning. And then what is arguably the most important cue of all, especially if you happen to be riding. Whoa. Now, if you noticed when Sarah was out in the snow on the road, I was saying, hike, hike, yeehaw. And I was saying easy and whoa. Don't screech. I don't care if he's going too fast. I mean, I do care, and I know that it's scary when he's going fast, but don't screech at him. Put your voice down low. Be calm. Whoa. Easy, buddy. Whoa. Lean back. Be calm. Now, you do not ever want the dog to know that the harness can beat him. If you attach him to something, you want him to know that he can pull that. So you can't use the harness to make him stop or to make him go left or right. If you need some way to control him, put a collar on and use that. Do not use your harness. On by means ignore that. Keep going. It's just Zen. Starts with hand Zen, open hand Zen, floor Zen, walking by Zen. The bottom right hand picture, both the llama and the dog are doing on by. They're both doing a very nice job. Assume the position means get in front of the vehicle so I can hitch you up. Come about means a 180, which can be useful when you spot something ahead that you really don't want to engage in. Line out is for lead dogs, where you want them to keep the line between, this is the tug line, between them and the sled. You want them to keep it tight so the other dogs don't get tangled in the line. Easy. Almost a stop, but not quite. Stay safe. That's really important. Don't just take the dog out and decide to go for, oh, now we can go explore the forest. No, you can't. Condition for distance. Condition for the temperature you'll be working in. Condition for the surface. I cannot tell you how many dogs I have seen whose owners have taken them out for a long, happy run on a gravel road and ripped their pads to shreds. In the summer, Sarah regularly does 7 kilometers on a gravel road. And we worked up to that. We started with half a kilometer, 1 kilometer, 1.5. We built it up very slowly. His pads are like rocks. But I guarantee if your dog goes out on a gravel road and does 7 kilometers at a brisk trot, he's not going to be walking for a couple of weeks after that. Condition for the load he's pulling. Carry a knife. A really old musher told me this once. You never go out on a sled without a knife. Because, something awful could happen. Your dog could end up with a broken leg or broken ribs or just incredibly panicked. He could be attacked by other dogs and be bleeding. I don't want to cut my harness either, but in an emergency, I need a knife so I can cut my harness. Carry water and a dish, and think about how you're going to protect your dog from being attacked by other dogs. I like to carry a short stock whip. They make a really cool noise that I have conditioned my dog to enjoy. When he hears that noise, he's going to get a treat. But it's really kind of scary for other dogs. And in absolute emergency, you can whack the other dog across the muzzle with it. And for you, have a quick release, especially if you're doing joring of some kind. Because, as my old musher told me, it's a real tragedy if your 5 dogs get away and get hit by a truck. That's terrible. But it's a heck of a lot worse if your 5 dogs and your kid in the basket of the sled get hit by a truck. If you're going to have kids in your vehicle, teach them to bail out when you tell them to. And in that case, I wouldn't be going, bail out, honey. I'd be, get out of there! Think about wearing a helmet. Be safe. Condition yourself and always carry a cell phone. Keep records if you want to. I love this app, Mushometer, or Mushometer, as some people say. Not only does it give me a picture of where I have been on that run, and it saves every run I've ever done, but I can't tell you how accomplished I feel when I look at 834 kilometers this season. Oh boy, are we good. Okay, I love this app and it just sits on my phone. Pre-flight checklist, a little toolkit, knife, tire gauge, maybe a little tire pump, duct tape, because you can fix almost anything with duct tape, you know that. First aid kit, helmet, your whip for protection, and information on who you are and who your dog is, and who to call in an emergency. Is your harness correct? Is your tire pressure correct? Is your hitching correct? Is your load tied down well enough? Check the balance of your harness and your cart. You got your phone, you got your treats, and you know what you're doing. Now, go have fun with your dog because there's so many good ways to have fun with your dog. Look at that Daxie. I love her. It's a Daxie taxi. So many different ways to have fun with your dog.